Hi, my name is Jamie Benson. The documentary that I watched is called Modern Slavery, Debt, Bondage, and Child Soldiers. This documentary introduces us to the problem of modern-day slavery, specifically in the realms of debt, bondage, and child soldiers. First, we are introduced to a slave in India who is indebted to his master. Him and his family have debt that is impossible to repay, so they will spend their entire lives in slavery unless they can find a way to escape. We are then introduced to a boy who was abducted by the Ugandan LRA when he was just 13 years old. He finally escaped captivity when he was 18. The events in this documentary take place all over the world, but are most prevalent in South America, Asia, and Africa. Poverty is one of the most influential factors that support slavery around the world. Countries with the most international debt have the highest amount of slaves in their region. Globally, the lowest income countries are located in South America, Asia, and Africa. As you can see from the map, South America and Africa have 500,000 to 5 million slaves, and Asia has over 5 million slaves. This phenomenon is not new at all, but unfortunately people are just not aware that there are still slaves in today's world. When most people think of slavery, they think back to the 14, 15, and 1600s when the African slave trade was in full effect. But what people don't know is that there are over 27 million slaves around the world right now. That's more than any other time in the history of the world. In Chapter 3 of our textbook, we are introduced to a term called forced migration. Forced migration between countries has historically occurred for two main cultural reasons, one being political instability and the other being slavery. Like I mentioned earlier, poverty is one of the highest contributors to modern-day slavery. The only way to ultimately end slavery is to abolish poverty. Since that isn't likely to happen anytime soon, there are several groups around the world that are committed to helping find a solution to slavery. There are groups who help prevent slavery, some groups that help people get out of slavery, and other groups who help people re-enter society after escaping from slavery. The Do Something Now campaign is one of the most notable groups fighting to end modern-day slavery. This past January, the Passion Conference was held at the Georgia Dome in Atlanta, and the Do Something Now campaign's main goal was to make people aware of the issue of modern-day slavery and introduce them to different organizations that are involved with the issue of slavery in different ways. I was actually at this conference, and that was the first time I was really aware of the fact that there are still slaves today. Another group that you may be familiar with is Invisible Children. This is the group that is fighting to capture Joseph Kony, the leader of the Ugandan LRA, also known as the Rebel Lords Resistance Army. I think it's safe to assume that most people around the world recognize that slavery is not something that is okay, and it's not something that should be happening at all around the world. Therefore, there really is no debate over the topic. Simply, there are people who are just trying to make the issue more known and allow people to help invest time in helping end slavery around the world. Films for the Humanities was responsible for making this film. As the leading providers of media for higher education, I'm fully confident that they are a credible source. The purpose of making this particular documentary was to introduce people to the issue of modern-day slavery, specifically in the realms of debt, bondage, and child soldiers. I hope that you learned a little bit more about modern-day slavery today. And these are my sources. Thank you.